Cool. All right, welcome to Data Transformations. By the end of this lesson, I hope you too will be able to transform data using array prototype methods. So, same thing I asked the last class. I haven't been around for your JavaScripting. Tell me, what are the things that like you can do in your sleep? Stuff that struggling with, you've done it once or twice, but maybe not all the way there, and stuff that is just mystifying to you. Fill me in.
Every time I get to a new level, I'm kind of throwing stuff at it until it works. I'll do like dot, and then we'll do brackets.
Okay.
I never know quite the first one the right way immediately.
Gotcha. Perfect. Dot versus bracket. That's a good one. What else? Let me get a picture of where any of you are at individually.
Syntax is kind of weird. What's the little rocket thing?
All right, fat arrow.
Fat arrow. Is that a technical term?
Yes, because in the predecessor to modern JavaScript, there's this thing called Coffeescript that was hot for 20 seconds. And that had a fat arrow and a skinny arrow, and they did different things. And skinny arrow didn't make it to JavaScript, but fat arrow did.
Good. Why would you have two?
For reasons that we don't care about in Mod 2, but will become clear in Mod 3. Cool. What else? What are we rocking at? What are we struggling with? The function thing? Function comparison? We got a ton of different ways you can write functions. Ben, you have one?
I think somebody kind of already said it. Just like iterating like through hashes. Like I just feel like I do it a really roundabout way.
Cool.
Basically hash control.
Cool. What else?
So we do like a reduce problem where it's like to find the maximum of some value.
Cool. What else?
Just as a suggestion, it would be super cool if we could reduce the object on the line above it to also get the max value.
Yeah.
And the key with the max value.
Beautiful. Love it. What else? Black my eyes. Cause my heart is in Ohio. All right, so let's talk about this first one, dot versus bracket. So I can do something like I do const some object is name, Kyle, age, unknowable. Okay, so I want to get some object's name. How do I do that?
Some object dot name.
Cool. That's one way to do it. Some object dot name. What is the other way I can do that? Yes, Patrick, tell me what to type.
Bracket, some object bracket, string, name.
Cool. Why on earth would I do one over the other? There's a very good reason that we sometimes use brackets.
You've got it as a variable or it's being, it's a variable.
Yep. Really, the big vocab word we want out of that is expression. So if I do dot, it is going to look for something that is that key. And unlike Ruby, there's not strings and symbols that we can use as keys. It's just strings, basically. So if I do dot name, it's going to look for a key with name. If it's in brackets, it can be something that evaluates to name. So if I also had a function in here, well, shit, let's type it out. So if I say something like, cool, some guy, and I do some guy dot name and poop it out to the screen. Cool, says Kyle. Now, where the brackets come in, they do some guy bracket string name. Should see Kyle. Kyle. Where this gets wild as hell is if I make a function called getName that just returns the string name. And I can also do some guy get name. I should see Kyle. Kyle. So there are going to be times where the specific key that we want to look up, we don't know ahead of time. It gets passed in as a variable, or it gets calculated in some way. That's when we use brackets. Rest of the time, dots are fine. More questions about dots versus brackets when we're looking stuff up. All right, fat arrows and function syntax. Let's talk about all the different ways that we can write functions. There's lots of them. The way you probably learned it up front, probably something like add to, takes in a number and returns, returns that number plus 2. Cool, that is the traditional way to write a gerbil script function. Not the only way though. We could also write it as a fat arrow. Whoa! Those are the same thing. I could have also written that like this. All right. Could have left the parentheses off on that. All these things are exactly the same. Questions about this? Yeah, Danny.
Is there a case where with the flat arrow you don't have to return like when I did?
So like in this one, this is an implicit return like we have in Ruby.
Yeah.
So it's going to return whatever this is.
So as long as it's one line. But
If it's on one line.
In that second one, where it says equal number, that's
Mhm.
still counting as like it's being passed that. Okay.
Correct. This is the argument,
Yeah.
just like it was up here. Or it's the parameter. It's the parameter when you're defining it, it's the argument when you're calling it.
Yeah.
Vocab trivia. Other questions about this?
I'm not done typing it all down yet, but I would love to know what those different kinds of functions are referred to as.
Cool. Everybody know? All three of these are the same thing. That one's different. This is called a function declaration. This is all of these are called function expressions. Function expression, function declaration. Another word you'll see used, especially in this like kind of one-liner format, is lambda. That also counts.
You can say it's a lambda equation.
Just a lambda. You say add 2 is a lambda. Although, strictly speaking, I think a lambda is not supposed to have a name. And so if I were doing something like 1, 2, 3, dot map, so that's going to return back an array with 3, 4, and 5. This is a lambda. We do it all in line like that. But that's the next thing I want to talk about.
What's it look like if there's multiple parameters?
Oh, good question. So it would look something like you have to use the parentheses.
Okay.
It would be like number 1, number 2.
What about on the first lambda? Is that right?
Down there, same thing.
Oh, just get bundling them all together.
Yep.
Okay.
You do it like that.
Okay.
Okay, next thing. This is a thing I need you to know. It's not a thing I need you to be able to do for pretty much this entire mod. But it's our first exposure to it. It's going to take a while because it's kind of weird. So this is a function definition, right? Just like it was up here. We're defining a function. So map is a function that takes a function in as an argument. Doesn't take in a Boolean, doesn't take in a string, it doesn't take in an object, it doesn't take in an array, it takes a function definition. That's a function definition. So is this. So I can also do that. That's the same as the thing I just did. Let that one sit for a second because that's heavy. These two things are literally equivalent. Add 2 is this function definition. Add 2 is this function definition. Just look at it for a while.
And just from our experience, we know that like .map, .reduce, they're taking something out of that thing it's working on and passing it to be that argument parameter.
Strictly speaking, we are applying this function to this, and then this, and then this, and returning an array of the results.
Okay.
Can you repeat how you worded it about map? You said it's a function definition of things in.
Map is a function. Strictly speaking, it's a method because it's on an object. It's a method that takes in a function definition as its argument. We can have functions that take in numbers. We have functions that take in strings. We have functions that take in objects. We have things that take in more than one value. We have things that take in Booleans. All that we're fine with. We did the same thing in Ruby. Not a problem. For some reason, it's because it's very abstract and weird, our brains just short circuit as soon as we're passing in a function. But a function definition is just another value, like any of that other stuff, except we can call it. That's what makes it magical. So that's as deep as we're going to go on that for today. I need to get that bug germinating in your head. We'll talk about it more in Mod 3. For right now, if you just memorize this syntax, or just know that all these different ways that I can define functions, I can also do them anywhere that's expecting a function. So I could also write that as I think you'll probably see that in labs and stuff a lot too, and just on the rest of the internet. You can also do it that way. All the different ways I have writing functions, I can just do those for anything that's expecting a function, which happens to be map, reduce, filter, find, all those. What was the equivalent idea in Ruby? Very similar kind of thing in Ruby. Not quite the same, but very similar. How did we map? Enumerables. What were we passing into enumerables?
Arrays?
Nope. So in Ruby, that would have been, what was that? Block. So if I was writing this in Ruby, it would be like sum array is this, and I do sum array dot map do number and then I do an implicit return on like number plus 2. That's how I did it in Ruby. This block right here, you can mentally just sort of swap that out for function in JavaScript. What's fucking cool about it is, I'm not gonna say you can't because you can, but you generally don't save blocks in variables. You write them out longhand like every time. You don't have to in JavaScript. We can do things like save them in variables or in declared functions and pass them in that way. Otherwise, we're doing basically the same shit. More questions about that conceptually?
Does that allow you to do more than one at once? Like if I wanted to do like a filter and then reduce my filter, I could basically have a function that I pass in that does both?
No. What you would do instead is chain them.
Okay.
And this is like kind of the heart of what data transformations are all about. So I say, all right, I want to map over this, and then I want to filter the result, and that takes in a function that takes in a number, and I only want to keep numbers that are greater than 4. And so then from that, I'll get back 5.
So if I define that function, then theoretically I could go pass it back in and do it a bunch of times.
Exactly.
Okay.
So this function might be called something like is greater than 4. And it just has that as its body. Filter is greater than 4. Dope. But yeah, it's part of the magic. JavaScript is super good at this, and Ruby is super not. Python isn't either. But writing these big chains, that's kind of what data transformation is all about. We take some inputs, and we transform, and transform, and transform, and transform, and then we get our final output. Yep.
I've heard the phrase anonymous function.
Mm-hmm.
Would that refer only to where the glue function word is embedded in the map call?
No.
So it's a function number, but you never name the function. It doesn't have a constant name. It doesn't
Correct.
have a function name.
Exactly. That's what makes it anonymous. This is an anonymous function. If I rewrote it as a lambda, that's also anonymous.
Oh, okay.
So if I rewrite it like that, the exact same thing, still anonymous. Anonymous just means it doesn't have a name. And if you're defining something at the place you're using it, it's common to not give it a name. Weird function trivia that I'm kind of loath to tell you, but you can also name your anonymous function. It's called a named anonymous function. JavaScript trivia. Makes your logs better, or your error messages better.
You do that? Is that name accessible outside of that function? Okay.
All it does is make your errors read better. But you can't reuse it anywhere. Super good question. Cool. Hashes. I want to be clear about this. JavaScript does not have hashes. Asterisks. It absolutely does. That's what an object is in JavaScript. JavaScript doesn't have objects. It does not have instances of classes, which is what an object is. The things that it calls objects are hashes. But we just use the word object. Hey, Brendan and I made it in 10 days. Give him a break. As you've all undoubtedly figured out by this point, we can't map over an object in JavaScript. Can't filter. Can't do any of these things. You can only do them on objects. So let's say that we do have an object that we need to do something with. What tools do we have at our disposal? Or a foreign or closely related? Yep. So our naked loops, got a few of them in JavaScript. We have do while. We have while do. We have just regular old while. We've got for. We have for in. We have for of. You need to know all of these someday, but not because you'll use them a lot. Like outside of like an example, I can't remember the last time I wrote a for loop in JavaScript. Like, don't do it. But if you don't know how to do this, it's going to come out in an interview and somebody's going to go like, I knew you didn't know how to program. And so it's worth learning someday. That would not be my priority for you right now. If you can map and filter and reduce and find and all that kind of shit, you can do pretty much all the iteration you need to. But for in and for of are two ways of working with objects. Okay. What about but even with those, I can't map, filter, reduce, that stuff. What do? How do I turn them into arrays? Another way of phrasing it. Or make a guess? Yes. So I've got object.entries, some object. Or keys or values. This is going to return an array of the keys. This is going to return an array of the values. This is going to return an array of arrays with key and value. And once they're arrays, we can do all this array kind of shit with them. Now, I read your survey comments, and some of you are very frustrated that you can't map, filter, reduce on objects like you could with hashes. There's hope. There's a tool called Lodash that is basically a collection of everything you should never write by hand in JavaScript, like intersection. Intersection takes two or more arrays and returns an array of everything that's in every one of them. You can absolutely write that kind of shit out by hand. Don't. They did a better job of it. Just use theirs. So it's a collection of little utilities like that. And they also give you things like filter that, wait for it, work on objects. Don't worry about that in Mod 2 either, but just know that it does exist. Help is coming. In the meantime, standard way to handle this is just turn it into an array.
Right.
Yep.
Can you say again what the return values are for each of the object.entries, object.keys, and object.values?
Hell yeah.
So keys and values are just arrays of keys and arrays of the values, object.entries.
Yeah, so if I say, oops. Some object. Okay, so there's some object. Object.entries will give me back an array of arrays. Like that. Keys will give me back name, hasdog. This will give me back Kyle and false. And that returns, so we can assign that. All right, now moment of truth. Am I right? Pairs, let's log pairs, keys, and values. I crack myself up. Nope, that's exactly what it is.
If it's a nested object, can you go down a level before invoking entries or any of those? Like objects. I don't know.
You have a dog now, Ahmed. Okay, so now Kyle has friends. Friends is an object. It's a key of Ahmed. So I want all the values from Ahmed. What do I do? Not dot values. So yeah, I can do it dot Ahmed, or if I have more than one, I'm also friends with Stephanie. I have 2 friends. I don't want to like brag about my friends or anything, but I have a couple. Call her Steph for short. Okay. Oh shoot! Now I can't do friends.Ahmed, friends.Stephanie. That gets out of control pretty quick. So what can I do with some object.friends? Probably not dot all. That sounds like a Ruby thing.
Object.
Well, hey, wait a minute. Now I just have a regular old object. Let's say I wanted each of these. What would I do? Not keys. Keys would give me Ahmed and Stephanie. I want these objects. Object.values, on the other hand, if I do object.values, now let's see if I get an array of objects. Fuck yeah, I can do something with that. I can map through it and get everybody's name. I can filter people out who don't have dogs. I can do whatever. I have an array now. That's the big magic trick. Sick. Yeah.
For entries,
Mm-hmm.
it's like kind of messy. What cases would you want to use then?
If you need to see the keys and the values at the same time. So the reason it looks messy is because how it always prints out, where it'll be name, Kyle, etc. In your head, you can translate to this and it might make more sense. And then I could have another one here. It's an array, each member of which is also an array that has the key and the value. key, value, key, value. So I can map over this or reduce it or whatever and see both the key and the value at the same time. I don't always need to do that, but if I do, that's the tool for it. Other questions about JS syntaxy stuff before we start doing some transfo?
On the, I guess, the MDN for, say, reduce,
Mm-hmm.
it's really hard to read the syntax they wrote in.
Yes, it is.
How do you read it? How is it meant to be
Sure.
interpreted? 'Cause I can only go by examples.
Sure. Yeah. Oof, boy, that sucks. I can't remember how I learned how to read this documentation.
There.
Yeah. But I feel for you. It just takes some time. All right. Here's what it means. Things in square brackets are optional. That's what that means. So, for example, this initial value, you don't have to have it because it's in brackets. Cool? These nested square brackets here, this means that current value is required, index is optional. Also, you can do current value and index, or current value and index and the original array.
But you could do array without index. Okay.
Correct. If you're doing that, you are also doing index.
Okay, yeah,
It's still awful.
that's terrible.
Yeah, it's rough.
It's because the brackets are used somewhere, like, it's around arrays, and like, oh,
Right.
we're trying to denote the array? Or-
Nope,
No.
optional.
Okay.
Now here's the good news.
Right.
This syntax, as gnarly as it is damn near universal. Like in almost every language, it looks roughly the same way. Ruby, Python, C++, Bash, all of them use some variant of this. So it takes forever to fucking learn, but once you do, reading documentation in just about any language, that kind of opens that door for you. Similar to what we did with like the nested arrays though, let's like unpack this. And this is one of the ways that I learned it. I'd recommend giving this a shot. Just reformat it. Reduce takes two arguments, a callback and an optional initial value. Cool. The callback, which is a function definition, those two things go hand in hand. A callback's always a function definition. That takes two arguments to it, minimum. Those two are mandatory, and up to 4. If you want the index of the item that you're on, you have the option of including that one. If you want a reference to the original array, you have that also. So we could also rewrite that callback doc this way. Reduce takes two arguments. The first function you pass in takes between 2 and 4 arguments. Great question. What else? Let's do some transformations. It's still in your channel, that Beyonce hash. Same one you did in Ruby. This time it's in JavaScript. So to wet your whistle, why don't you try doing the first 3 on your own? Console log all the songs, console log all the movies, and create an array with a list of all of Beyonce's, I'm gonna say titles on this one, because the song is the whole object, but that's exactly what the first thing is. Give me an array with all of Beyonce's hit song titles. Do those first three, couple minutes on the clock. Go. All right, so let's do a whip around on this. Josh, help me through the first one. How am I console logging all the songs? Okay, so let's reason through it. So console log, that's the first part. It's in the instructions. And I have this object here. What are the songs in this? Actually, let me rephrase that. What are the keys of the Beyonce object? Hits and movies. So it's two keys. Which one do we care about for this first question? Hits. Cool. Hits is an array with all the songs. Wait a minute. It wants all the songs. So, how do I get all of Beyonce's hits? Beyonce dot hits. Cool. And if I run that, I get an array of all of Beyonce's hits. Could have also written that as square brackets and then the string hits. But honestly, dot hits, that'll get you a long way. Same thing. If I have that object and I want the value of this key, I give it the key, it gives me the value. Cool. Let's see, Sam, give me the next one. If I want to console log all the movies.
You do console.log, parens, object.values, parens Beyonce.hits.
Ooh, all the movies?
Sorry, I was on the third one.
Oh.
Console.log, Beyonce.movies.
There we go. Cool. So that gives me all the movies right after that. All right, now starting to get a little bit of transformation. So if this gives me the songs, this gives me the movies. Shoot, for that matter, I could even probably save these and reuse them. Fuck that. All right, that lets me know that I can get just songs and just get movies. So I want to create an array with a list of all of Beyonce's hit songs. Danny, give it a shot. Good. Why'd you pick map? All of them do that. Map is the right one, but why did you pick that? Map transforms. Here's another hint on map. Same number in and out. If I have 10 songs, I want 10 song titles. That right away, instant hit, you're probably looking at a map. Cool. So I'm mapping over each of these, and then what do I do in this map? What data type does map take as an argument? Nope. That's what it's working on. What goes in between these parentheses? A function. Okay? So I type function, and then what gets passed into this function? Hit. So, word of advice, if this is hits, this is hit. If this is songs, this is song. Plural, singular. Just automatic. Don't get clever with the naming on it. Whatever it was plural, make it that singular. You save yourself a lot of brain cycles on that. Okay, so I have a function here that gets every individual hit passed into it. So Danny, how did I get that out?
Return.
Hit.title. All right. Does this give me an array with a list of all of Beyonce's hit songs? By God, yes it does. This is probably the single most common use case for map, by the way. I have an array of objects, and I want an array of just one of their values. Map, you should just pull that out right away, every time. And now, from this, I could filter this down to things that are longer than 6 characters. I can do whatever. But if I need to transform that whole shit into that, that's how I do it. So let's work through this one together. Carl, talk me through how you would approach this next one. Create an array with a list of all Beyonce's fierceness ratings.
Where is fierceness? It's under hits.
Correct. It is a characteristic of hits.
So if you cheat off the last one, Beyonce.hits.
Mm-hmm.
Do dot map.
Why dot map? Why dot map?
Because we're going to be, because we're going to do same in, same out.
If I have 7 songs, I want 7 fierceness ratings. Cool.
And then say it's a hit, fat arrow, and then hit fierceness, dot fierceness.
Love it. Hey! Ta-da. Not bad. Now, note that I did the function keyword. I did that like declared function style here. Did the fat arrow here. It's the same shit. Doesn't matter. You'll see it both ways a lot. I could have rewritten this one as hit fat arrow hit dot title. And especially when you're just yanking out a property like that over and over again, that's by far the most common way to write it. It's a little one-liner lambda. Cool. So let's see. Parker, help me work through this one. Give me a song where Beyonce is not wearing a bodysuit. Before we start this, let's clarify some things. This says give me a song. Somewhere along the line, what's going to get used? What is it? Find, yeah. So for each find, filter, map, reduce, includes. Every one of these can be done with this. But why find? Why not filter? So filter and find are close cousins. Filter is all matches. Find first match. So if I want one, I use find. Okay, so I'm going to use find somewhere in here. What else? Without working the problem, what else Parker, can I get out of the instructions here? Give me a song where Beyonce is not wearing a bodysuit.
So it's going to be in song, it's going to be in hits.
Correct. So I'm going to be in hits, and I'm going to need to find something. Okay, so Finn, talk me through how I'm going to write this. A song where Beyonce is not wearing a bodysuit. A song. So we know we're working with hits, and we know we're going to use find somewhere.
Okay, we got Beyonce dot, it's dot find.
Good. What does find take?
Function.
Good.
So the same thing that you have left.
Okay. What is it expecting this function to return? Because it's different than it worked in map.
Need a comparison statement.
Yes. I need something that's going to return truthy or falsy. Not necessarily true or false, although that helps. But something that JavaScript thinks is truthy or something that JavaScript thinks is falsy. And what's the difference between those? Truthy and falsy.
Is the return value of a comparison that either value is true or false?
Yes, but not literally true or false. That's true or false. Truthy or falsy, despite the Colbertness of that, that is a real thing. Everybody heard truthy, falsy. We had it in Ruby also.
So truthy means that there is at least a value. The value exists. False
Correct.
Could be nil and nothing is there.
Exactly. So the falsy values in Ruby were nil and there's one other one. Yeah, nothing. That's falsy. Everything else is truthy. Now JavaScript's a little bit broader. So falsy values JavaScript. And this is different in every language, by the way. False, duh. 0, an empty string. Null, undefined, and not a number. All of those are falsy. If one of those shows up, returned like in that function in a filter, it's the same as returning false. Everything else is truthy, including the number 1, and any object, including an empty object, any array, including an empty array. All of those count as truthy values. So if this function needs to return back something truthy or falsy, and the first thing that returns truthy, that's what we get. What you got, Finn?
Hit, dot, usually one that says what their signature look. It says, I don't know if they all say sporty bodysuit, because we might have to do.
Ooh. So I'm going to say, let's break this out into a multi-line one. Let's read a little bit easier. So return hit dot signature look, and what were we going to do?
Dot, includes question mark, parentheses.
No question mark. Question marks in Ruby don't have. I love that convention, by the way. There's like a few things I really, really like that Ruby does. That's one of them. It's not in JavaScript though. So includes, and what goes in here?
String bodysuit.
All right.
Yeah, but it's asking for one where it does not include.
So how do I?
So just put bang in front of it.
There we go. Bang. Opposite. All right. Signature look, fedora with yellow feather. Not a bodysuit in sight.
I was thinking that it's asking to return just the title of the song.
Okay, let's say I needed to return the title of this. I can fix that real easy. What do I do?
Go down one, do return hit.title.
Not quite. Simpler than that. But
You can just append it, yeah.
dot title. Pew. Okay, next one is give me all of the songs where Beyonce is not wearing a bodysuit. I'll refresh your memory. All matches, first match. So, Rocky, what am I going to do? How am I going to adjust this to give me all of the songs?
Just switch it from find to filter.
That's all you got to do. All you need is filter. Bum, 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 bum.
Way to use the bang in JavaScript, like not tagging it to the front of the return. You do like hit signature looks, bang equals bodysuit.
Yes. But remember, it's these long-ass descriptions like braided crown with gold bikini top. We're looking for the existence of that string within whatever description. But yes. Cool. Now, what if we just wanted the titles? That's what Chisi was saying. This is trickier because filter is giving me back an array. If I want all the titles of things where she's not wearing a bodysuit, how do I adjust that? Carl.
Map it after the filter.
Yep. Dot map. And then Carl, what do I put in here?
Dot map. Still a hit.
Yep.
technically.
Correct.
So hit down arrow to hit dot title.
Love it. And there we go. Fucking cool. All right, last thing we're going to do before feelings. You wanted like a max kind of thing in a reduce. This seems like a perfectly appropriate one. Create an array with all of the songs where Beyonce's fierceness is greater than or equal to 8. Let's work through this one as a class. So we're going to, tell you what, we're going to start by doing this, and then we're going to get the song that has the highest fierceness rating. Okay. So create an array. That's going to be part of this. Now, important thing to know, map, filter, and reduce. All of these always return a new array. Always. Find always returns one thing. That's a key difference between filter and find. All matches, even if there's only one match, always comes back in an array. Always comes back as whatever the thing that we just matched was. So when we use one of those, it's going to make a new array for us. Create an array with all of the songs or Beyonce's fierceness rating. So songs, how do we get the songs? Yep. Okay, so now I have all the songs, but I only want ones where her fierceness is greater than or equal to 8. What do I do? Sure. What does filter take? Function. Cool. What goes in the function? Okay, what's the condition? Hit dot fierceness greater than or equal to 8. Yep. What did I screw up here? Yep. Cool. Fierceness 10. Fierceness 10. Fierceness 10. All right, cool. Now, let's say I wanted to do this where that has the greatest fierceness. I could do find fierceness 10. That'll give me the first match. That's a way to do it. But let's say I didn't know. Arbitrary scale. It has no limit. How would I reduce to do that exact same thing? Let's review the reduce syntax. So reduce accumulates. Slightly different syntax than all the other ones. We have sum array dot reduce and reduce takes in sum function in any syntax you want. The difference here is it takes 2 arguments, the accumulator and whatever the item is, and whatever gets returned out of this becomes the accumulator the next time. The second argument reduce takes is the initial value, or whatever. So I say Beyonce hits dot reduce hit. Oop. So let's do it the exact same way I just did it. Take some function that takes in fiercest song and hit. Let's say fiercest hit. And we'll say like false. Whatever the default value is. No songs in there, what comes back? All right. Whatever I return from this function, we look at the first hit. Whatever returns from this becomes the new fiercest hit. You go to the next thing. Whatever we return out of that becomes the new fiercest hit. We can keep returning fiercest hit as is every single time if we want to. Whatever gets returned out of this just replaces whatever was there last time. So how do I do this?
If hit dot fierceness is greater than the fiercest hit.
Fiercest hit?
Dot fierceness?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, reduce the hit.
Correct.
Okay, good.
So what do we do then?
Then reassign the current hit to the fiercest hit.
Yep. Just return hit.
Or just return it.
Because whatever returns out of that becomes the new fiercest hit. All right, that's not the case. What do we do? It wasn't more. So we do what? Finn?
You just go on.
Not just go on. We have to return something. Because otherwise, if it's not, this becomes undefined.
Oh, really?
Return 0.
Return 0 or return
Return fiercest hit.
return fiercest hit.
Okay.
The champion retains the crown. Like I said, you can keep returning the same thing. That's fine. anytime you're doing an if-else like this, especially one that returns, there's actually a better syntax for this. Anybody happen to know it?
What is it? The
That's it.
Whatever that's called.
Ternary.
Ternary, but you do parentheses, hit fierceness greater than fierceness hit.
Yep.
And then, oh shoot, where's the question mark go?
Where does the question mark go?
It goes afterwards. And
Afterwards.
After the parentheses.
Okay.
Oh, well.
And then what's the other
It's
symbol?
all on one line.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, and then.
What's the other one?
And then colon.
Yeah.
Fiercest hit.
Cool. And then we can delete the if. We can delete that. And then you can also jam that all in one line. You actually have to in Ruby. All right, let's see if that worked.
You're missing a parenthesis in front of hit. Yeah.
You actually, or get rid of the other one.
I thought you did.
Unexpected token 118.
After false?
No, that's right.
Yeah, reduce the one over.
Oh, I see. Good call. No fiercest hit. Uh-oh. Oh, you know why? Because it's going to look up fiercest hit dot fierceness. It's going to look up false dot fierceness. That doesn't help. Actually, believe it or not, this will work without having the initial value on it. There we go. Fierceness, 10. Booyah achieved. All right, what lingering questions have you going into the weekend about how we map, filter, and reduce our little hearts out?
So reduce doesn't return an array unless an array was the original cumulative value.
No, unless array was the last thing returned
Okay.
as it was iterating. I brought this up earlier, thought you might be curious. My last job, I did a ton of data transformations. That was like a key part of my job. Data transformations are very hard, so which means that most people are bad at them. Those two things are equivalent. That's what something being hard means. So if you are good at something that is hard, job security. I'm very good at data transformations. I do not regret that. So my last job, we did scheduling training for doctors and nurses. So the trainers have availability, the doctors and nurses have availability, the equipment they need to train on has availability, the rooms they're using them in have availability. So the app that I built was a calendar that took all of those availabilities and basically did intersections on all of them. So you could paint availabilities on a calendar and say, I need 3 hours where this thing and this thing and this thing is available, and also any instructor. That was hard. This was the code that I wrote that did that. And let's see, can I collapse any of this? Filter. These are filters. Those are filters. Map, 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 filter, map, filter, reduce. Even some of these things like equal, that's a filter. Sum, that's a filter. Map, flatten, that's a reduce. Group by, that's a reduce. Map, map. So this is the gnarliest code I think I've ever written in my career. 262 lines. The imperative if else for loop shit that the person before me wrote was about 10,000 lines long. The applicatives, and that 10,000 lines, that's a lot of places for a bug to hide. Very difficult to hide a bug in 260 lines. So that's the long game with this. Map, filter, and reduce, there's very few problems you can't solve with those three things. And if I'm being honest, you can also rewrite map and filter with reduce. So reduce is your Swiss Army knife. any data transformation problem is ultimately like a reduced problem at some point. This is probably more than almost anything else we do in the program, the skill that translates to more environments the most. So it's like you can get through this mod with like a bare minimum of skills. It's not a bad one investing some extra time in. Cool. Anything else we need to talk about before we go into feelings? All right, survey's going out. Bye.